Hello and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Monday, April 6th edition of our video devotionals, and we appreciate you being with us today. I hope your Monday is going well, and here it is the day after Resurrection Sunday yesterday, and I'm sure a lot of churches probably had increased attendance, maybe some visitors. For us, had a real blessing. About, 3 or 4 months ago, I had been in an area knocking doors and met a lady, and I remember talking to her, and she came to church yesterday, and she brought 3 of her family members with her, and they enjoyed the service. And as we were letting out, she says, "I want you and your wife to come to our house for Easter dinner, Easter lunch." And I thought, wow, that's pretty big to invite somebody you've of course she had met me once but never been to church. And so we went, had a great time just speaking, had a great meal. And she says she's going to return all excited. So that was a tremendous blessing. And then I know we had some other folks in that were, had come because of Easter. So all in all, a good day. And it's always good when you can see kind of the product of your going out and knocking on doors, trying to tell people about Jesus, and of course, tell them about your church and all of that. So that was good. And I was excited about that. So that's just one of the many blessings, and I'm sure many of you have blessings you can share too. All right, we're going to be in Judges chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. Find that if it is your custom. Otherwise, hopefully you're having a great day. Of course, it is the beginning of the work week and school week. So, as we're getting into the month of April, the temperatures are going to start to increase, and I know kids get excited about getting out of school. And of course, everybody gets excited, I guess, about the spring and the summer and all of that. Otherwise, let's give you something here from the Word of God that I know will be of help to all of us. Judges chapter 3, verse 1 says this, "Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan." Verse 2, "Only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof." Verse 3, "Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon unto the entering in of Hamath." Last verse, verse 4. "And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses." Now, I've got 3 phrases underlined. I'm going to read those phrases that we just read, but I'm going to read the phrases only. From verse 1, it says, "to prove Israel by them." Verse 2, "to teach them war." And then in verse 4, "whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers." So when I look at this, I see a God that, of course, is concerned about his people. And one of the things in that day was they had to be able to know how to go to war. That's just something that God says you're going to have to know how to do this because of the enemies around you. And we know from the book of Joshua there was that inheritance to gain, and there was wars to fight. And of course, that was literally, when we think of the war in the sense of hand-to-hand combat and all of that, that's the focus there. All right, so the Bible teaches us that there were these nations left to prove Israel. And specifically in verse 4, whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord. So when you think about it, when Israel went to war, their success was based upon the Lord's help, not in particular their own ability to fight wars. And I think God made that as a way to say, you need to trust me. Because we know that when we go back to the book of Joshua, and that the Lord had orchestrated that great battle to take down the city of Jericho, and that was a great victory. Then, because there was sin in the camp that had to be dealt with, they thought, well, we can go out here and take this next place called Ai, and we won't even take very many of us. We'll do this. This will be an easy one. Well, because God was not blessing them, and God says, I'm not with you, then they lost 36 men. And they had to take care of things, and Joshua had to take care of things to get the Lord's blessing upon them again, and to make sure that he's going with them in the battle and all of that. So that was a victory after the fact. So when we see this, and the Bible tells us to teach them war, there is a proper way to understand what God says advance. Like in our day, we're not taking guns and weapons and all of that. we're taking the sword of the Spirit, and we are having to stand as a soldier and fight the Lord's battles. And if God goes with us and He directs us, then we can win those battles. But we need to make sure that we're following the Lord and listening to Him, and that's important. So when it comes to the phrase to teach them war, then think about that. There is a legitimate war to fight and wars to fight that God would lead us into and direct and help us in those battles. And I think that's important for us to note today. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Have a great day, safe day, healthy day. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow. And thank you for watching.